June 18th, 2020. Ernst Young, one of the big four accounting firms, is about to sign off on Wirecard's 2019 audit. They've been auditing this company for 11 years. 11 years of clean opinions. Wirecard is in Germany's DAX 30, the index reserved for the country's industrial champions. BMW Siemens, Wirecard, $24 billion market cap at its peak. And then, at 9 a.m. Munich time, EY releases a statement. We cannot verify that $1.9 billion exists. The cash that's supposed to be sitting in Asian bank accounts, the cash that makes up a quarter of Wirecard's balance sheet, we can't find it. By market close, Wirecard's shares drop 60%. 3 days later, the company files for insolvency. The CEO is arrested. The COO vanishes, literally disappears, last seen boarding a flight to Belarus, now one of Europe's most wanted fugitives. And here's the part that should haunt every investor watching this. The journalists found the fraud. The short sellers saw it. The auditors, the people paid millions to catch exactly this, missed it for a decade. This isn't a story about one bad company. It's a story about how the people whose entire job is to say, prove it, never asked for proof. Wirecard wasn't some penny stock. In September 2018, it entered the DAX 30, Germany's most prestigious stock index. That's not a participation trophy. You don't get into the DAX by accident. It's the 30 largest, most liquid companies on the Frankfurt Exchange. The list is dominated by century-old industrial giants. And there, next to Volkswagen and Deutsche Bank, was Wirecard, a fintech payment processor that had somehow convinced the German establishment it was the future. By the summer of 2018, Wirecard shares hit $190. Market cap, over $24 billion. Analysts loved it. The German business press treated CEO Markus Braun like a visionary. This was Germany's answer to Silicon Valley, a homegrown tech champion that processed payments for airlines, retailers, e-commerce platforms across Asia and Europe. Ernst Young had been signing clean audits since 2009. Not a single red flag, not a single qualification. 11 consecutive years of unqualified opinions. And the balance sheet looked rock solid. In particular, one line item stood out. $1.9 billion in cash, held in trust accounts in the Philippines and other Asian markets. That cash represented about a quarter of Wirecard's total assets. It was the foundation of the company's valuation, proof that the explosive growth in Asia wasn't just revenue, it was real money sitting in real banks. So when the Financial Times reporter Dan McCrum started publishing stories in 2019 alleging accounting fraud, the reaction from Germany's financial establishment wasn't concern. It was outrage at McCrum. BaFin, Germany's financial regulator, didn't investigate Wirecard. They investigated the journalists and short sellers, accusing them of market manipulation. Large sections of the German business press attacked the FT, calling McCrum a criminal working with short sellers. Wirecard's version of events, any irregularities are minor, McCrum is lying, became the official narrative. But then, in early 2020, Wirecard hired KPMG to conduct a special audit, a way to put the allegations to rest once and for all. And in April 2020, KPMG came back with a problem. They couldn't verify $1 billion in cash. And that's when everything started to unravel. EI's 2019 audit was supposed to be finished in late April 2020. Then it got delayed. Officially, the reason was COVID-19. Understandable. Auditors couldn't travel. Banks were slow to respond. The new deadline, June 18th. That morning, EY released their statement. After 11 years of clean audits, they could not verify the existence of $1.9 billion in cash. Specifically, cash supposedly held in trust accounts at 2 banks in the Philippines. EY had requested confirmation directly from the banks. The banks said the accounts didn't exist. Here's where it gets strange. Wirecard didn't deny it. That same day, CEO Markus Braun released a statement. It cannot be ruled out that Wirecard has been the victim in a substantial case of fraud. Not, the auditors are wrong. Not, we'll provide proof. The company's official position was that they had been defrauded. By whom? Braun pointed to a rogue employee. He suspended COO Jan Marsalek, the executive responsible for Wirecard's Asian operations. on a revocable basis until June 30th. But Marsalek never made it to June 30th. According to reports, he tried to contact the Philippine banks himself to get documentation. He couldn't, because the accounts never existed. On June 22nd, Marsalek was fired. By June 23rd, he had disappeared. He boarded a flight from Austria, and then nothing. German authorities later discovered he'd fled to Belarus. He's now on Interpol's red notice list, one of Europe's most wanted fugitives. There are reports he's operating under the false identity Alexander Mikhailovich Nelidov. There are reports linking him to Russian intelligence. He has not been seen since. And this is the part nobody talks about. Wirecard drew down 90% of a $2 billion credit line in the days before the announcement. Commerzbank, LBBW, ING, ABN AMRO, some of the largest European banks, had lent Wirecard hundreds of millions based on a balance sheet that included $1.9 billion in cash that didn't exist. The four largest lenders had $200 million in exposure each. On June 25th, Wirecard filed for insolvency with a Munich district court. It became the first DAX 30 company to go bankrupt. Markus Braun was arrested shortly after his resignation, charged with market manipulation and fraud. As of this recording, he's awaiting trial. So here's the question everyone should be asking. How did $1.9 billion in fake cash stay on the balance sheet for years? EY had been auditing Wirecard since 2009. An auditor's entire job is to verify assets exist. You don't just take management's word for it. You send confirmation requests to banks. You ask for statements. You trace the money. The journalists at the Financial Times didn't have subpoena power. They didn't have audit access. And they found it. Dan McCrum and his team published detailed reports in 2019 showing that Wirecard's Asian revenues didn't make sense, that third-party payment partners were suspicious, that the accounting didn't add up. Short sellers saw it, activists published research, and yet EY, with full access to Wirecard's books, with the legal authority to demand documentation from banks, with 11 years of audits under their belt, signed off on every financial statement. Here's what everyone missed. The fraud wasn't sophisticated. Wirecard allegedly created fake contracts, forged bank statements, and fabricated confirmations from trustees. According to later investigations, the company hired a Libyan operative named Rami El Obeidi, briefly the head of foreign intelligence for Libya's transitional government after Gaddafi, to run surveillance on critics and create fake documentation. But the structure of the deception was simple. Inflate Asian revenues, claim the cash is held in trust accounts offshore, provide documents that look official but are never actually verified with the banks. The signal was always there. The Financial Times published it. KPMG's special audit in April 2020 couldn't verify $1 billion. And when EY finally asked the Philippine banks directly, not through Wirecard, not through intermediaries, but directly, the banks said, "These accounts don't exist. They never did." This is where it stops being a coincidence. For years, Wirecard had claimed that trust account structures in Asia were complex, that cultural and regulatory differences made verification difficult. EY apparently accepted that. But when another auditor, KPMG, couldn't verify the cash, and when EY finally demanded direct confirmation, the entire story collapsed in 72 hours. By the time the market opened on June 19th, Wirecard shares were trading at $26, down from $104 the week before. By June 25th, when insolvency was filed, they were at $3. Over $24 billion in market cap, gone. And the only people who didn't see it coming were the ones whose job it was to look. There's a name for what happened here: authority bias. When an institution you trust, a Big Four auditor, a financial regulator, a DAX 30 listing committee, says something's legitimate, you stop asking questions. Ernst Young had been auditing Wirecard since 2009. 11 consecutive clean opinions. That's not a small thing. An EY audit is supposed to mean something. Investors assume that if EY signed off, someone checked. Regulators assume the auditors did their job. And everyone points to everyone else. Germany's BaFin, the financial regulator, didn't investigate Wirecard when journalists raised red flags. They investigated the journalists. They assumed the auditors had verified the cash, so the critics must be wrong. The auditors assumed management was telling the truth because management had always told the truth before, and management knew that as long as the auditors kept signing, no one else would dig. It's the same trap that caught auditors in Enron, in WorldCom, in every major accounting fraud. Once the initial trust is established, it becomes self-reinforcing. The longer the fraud goes undetected, the more unlikely it seems that it could be a fraud. They've been audited for a decade. Someone would have caught it by now. But here's the thing about audits. They're not designed to catch fraud. They're designed to verify that financial statements are free from material misstatement. If management lies, if documents are forged, if the client is actively hiding evidence, audits don't catch that unless the auditor specifically decides to verify with third parties. And for years, EY apparently didn't verify directly with the banks. They relied on documentation provided by Wirecard. The story everyone tells about Wirecard is that it was a fraud, and it was one of the largest corporate frauds in European history. But that's not the part that should keep you up at night. The part that matters is this. The fraud wasn't caught by the system designed to catch it. It was caught by a journalist with a spreadsheet and a hunch. Dan McCrum didn't have audit rights. He didn't have access to internal documents. He just looked at the numbers and asked, does this actually make sense? And when it didn't, he kept digging. The regulators, the auditors, the credit rating agencies, they all had more access, more authority, more responsibility, and they all missed it. Or worse, they defended the company and attacked the critics. Baffin's investigation wasn't into Wirecard. It was into the people saying Wirecard might be lying. There's a lesson here, and it's not subtle. The institutions you trust to verify truth, auditors, regulators, rating agencies, don't get paid to blow up their clients. They get paid to sign off, and the longer they've been signing off, the harder it becomes to admit they were wrong. If this is the kind of story you want to see more of, you know what to do. The stock market doesn't reward the truth, it rewards the consensus. And the consensus is always whatever the auditors are willing to sign.